expression that changed my life was simple. If you keep doing what you've been doing, where will you be in 5 years? And the answer hit me like a ton of bricks. I'd be exactly where I was, average, stuck, wondering why. That's what I want to talk to you about today. Not just why average people stay average, but how you can make sure you don't. You see, most folks aren't failing in life. They're just succeeding at being average. And being average isn't some accident. It's a choice. Maybe not a direct choice, but it's the result of all the little choices made day after day, year after year. Look around. The statistics don't lie. Most people live paycheck to paycheck. Most marriages struggle. Most people don't love their work. Most people wish for more but do little to get it. Not because they can't do better, but because they've settled into patterns that keep them exactly where they are. Here's what I've learned in my journey. Average isn't about ability, it's about standards. What you're willing to accept, what you're willing to tolerate, the level of mediocrity you're comfortable with. The truth is, extraordinary success is available to ordinary people who make extraordinary choices, but most won't. And I want to tell you why. The reason average people stay average is simple: comfort. Human beings are drawn to comfort like moths to a flame. We want ease. We want convenience. We want the path of least resistance. And there's nothing wrong with comfort itself. I like a comfortable chair as much as the next person. But comfort as a life strategy, that's a recipe for average. You see, your comfort zone feels safe. It's familiar. It doesn't ask much of you. But growth happens outside that zone. Success requires you to become uncomfortable, to stretch, to face the unknown, to risk failure. Average people choose comfort over growth almost every time. They stay in jobs they don't love because it's easier than starting over. They maintain relationships that drain them because confrontation feels too hard. They watch television instead of studying because it's more pleasant in the moment. I often ask people, how many books have you read in the last year? The average person reads less than 1 book per year after leaving school. 1 book. Meanwhile, the top earners in every field read at least 1 book per month. That's 12 times the input minimum. And why? Because reading requires effort. It's not as comfortable as watching television. The second part of this comfort problem is settling. Average people settle for less than they're capable of because they've convinced themselves that good enough is good enough. But here's what I know. Isn't good enough if it means you're denying your potential. Good enough isn't good enough if you've got more to give. Good enough isn't good enough if you know deep down you were made for more. I'm not talking about perfectionism. I'm talking about the willingness to keep reaching, to keep growing, to keep pushing past what feels comfortable toward what feels meaningful. The second major reason average people stay average is that they don't understand the power of small choices. Your life today is essentially the sum of your choices up to this point. Let that sink in. Where you are right now is the result of thousands of daily decisions that shaped your health, your wealth, your relationships, and your personal growth. Average people consistently make slightly below average choices. Not terrible choices. Not choices that lead to disaster, just small compromises, tiny concessions, little indulgences that, taken individually, I'll start my diet tomorrow. I'll begin saving next month. I'll have that difficult conversation someday. But those small choices compound. That's the secret successful people understand. Just like compound interest can turn a small investment into a fortune over time, compound decisions can turn small daily choices into extraordinary success. If you improve yourself just 1 each day for a year, you'll end up 37 times better, not just 365 better. That's the power of compounding. But it works in reverse too. Small negative choices compound into big negative results. Think about it. The person who eats a little too much and exercises a little too little doesn't see the consequence the next day or the next. But 5 years later, 10 years later, the compound effect reveals itself. The person who spends a little more than they earn doesn't feel the pain immediately. But give it time. The compound effect guarantees they'll feel it eventually. This is why average people stay average. They don't connect their daily choices with their long-term outcomes. They don't see how skipping the workout today connects to poor health in 10 years. They don't see how watching television instead of learning a new skill connects to career stagnation. Successful people make the connection. They understand that today matters. That this moment, this choice, this decision is shaping their future in ways they might not see yet, but will certainly experience. The third reason, and this might sting a little, is that average people don't take full responsibility for their lives. They play the blame game. They make excuses. They point fingers. The economy is bad. My boss doesn't like me. I never had the opportunities others had. Nobody helped me. And let me be clear, some people do start with disadvantages. Some people do face unfair challenges. Some people do get dealt a tougher hand. But it's also reality that your response to circumstances matters more than the circumstances themselves. It's reality that many successful people faced tremendous obstacles and chose to overcome them rather than be defined by them. Average people tend to view themselves as victims of circumstance. Successful people view themselves as creators of circumstance. It's a fundamental difference in mindset that leads to fundamentally different outcome. When you take complete responsibility for your life, all of it, the good and the bad, something powerful happens. You move from passive to active, from reactive to proactive. You stop waiting for conditions to change and start changing conditions. I learned this lesson early in my career when I was struggling financially. I could have blamed the economy, my employer, my education, or a dozen other factors. And maybe there was some truth in those excuses. But none of those excuses would have put money in my bank account or food on my table. It wasn't until I took full responsibility, until I said, this is my life, my situation, and only I can change it, that things began to turn around. Because when you take responsibility, you take power. You become the author of your story rather than just a character in someone else's. Average people give their power away. They surrender control to external forces. They let circumstances dictate their choices rather than making choices that change their circumstances. And here's another subtle way average people avoid responsibility. They don't set clear goals. Without a target, you can't miss. Without a standard, you can't fall short. So they live vaguely with fuzzy intentions rather than clear objectives. This protects their ego, but limits their growth. Successful people take a different approach. They set specific goals. They establish clear metrics. They define what success looks like so they know exactly what they're aiming for, and so they can take full responsibility for hitting or missing the mark. The fourth reason average people stay average is that they don't understand the principle of the critical few versus the trivial many. This is sometimes called the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule. And it suggests that roughly 80 of effects come from 20 of causes. In practical terms, this means 80 of your results come from 20 of your efforts. 80 of your income comes from 20 of your work. 80 of your happiness comes from 20 of your relationships. 80 of your growth comes from 20 of your learning. Average people spread themselves too thin. They try to do everything, be everywhere, please everyone. They don't prioritize because they haven't identified what truly matters most. Successful people focus on the vital few activities that drive the majority of their results. They identify their highest leverage opportunities and concentrate their time, energy, and resources there. I see this mistake all the time. People who are busy but not productive. People who confuse activity with accomplishment. People who work hard on low-value tasks while neglecting the few high-value activities that could transform their results. Ask yourself, what are the 20 of activities in your life that produce 80 of your desired results? What are the few things that matter most in your work, your relationships, your health, your financial future? Then how much of your time is currently dedicated to those critical few activities? Most average people spend the majority of their time on the trivial many while giving minimal attention to the critical few. Then they wonder why they stay stuck in average results. The fifth reason, though, and I believe this is one of the most significant, is that average people prioritize entertainment over education. They choose amusement over advancement. Look at how the average person spends their free time. Hours of television, social media, video games, gossip. Activities that consume time but produce nothing of lasting value. Now, I'm not against recreation. Leisure has its place. But when entertainment becomes your default, when it's how you spend the majority of your discretionary time, you've made a choice for average. The average American watches over 4 hours of television daily. That's more than 1,400 hours per year. If you invested even half those hours in learning, growing, and developing new skills, how different might your life be after 5 years? After 10? Successful people guard their time like the precious resource it is. They understand that time is the great equalizer. We all get the same 24 hours, but how we use those hours creates dramatic inequality in result. This doesn't mean successful people never relax or enjoy entertainment. They do, but they approach it differently. They consume entertainment intentionally, not as a default setting. They set boundaries around leisure activities rather than letting those activities consume their lives. I often tell people, stand guard at the door of your mind. Be careful about what you let in. Every input shapes your thinking. Every show, every conversation, every book influences your perspective. Average people let just about anything in. Successful people are more selective. And here's something crucial. Average people spend money on entertainment. Successful people invest money in education. Average people see learning as something that ends with formal schooling. Successful people see learning as a lifelong commitment. When I was young and broke, I spent my last few dollars on a personal development seminar. My friends thought I was crazy. Why not use that money for bills? They asked. But I understood something they didn't. If I only paid bills, I'd only ever have bills to pay. I needed to invest in myself if I wanted different results. That investment paid off many times over. The knowledge I gained helped me increase my income, which solved my bill problems permanently rather than temporarily. This is how successful people think. They play the long game. They make short-term sacrifices for long-term gains. The sixth reason average people stay average is they don't understand the formula for financial independence. They work for money instead of having money work for them. The wealth formula is simple. Earn, save, invest, repeat. Average people focus only on earning, and often not even on maximizing their earning potential. They get a job, earn a paycheck, spend the paycheck or more, and repeat the cycle. Then they wonder why they never get ahead financially. Successful people approach money differently. They certainly focus on earning, often developing multiple income streams rather than relying on a single paycheck. But they don't stop there.
They save systematically, understanding that you can't invest what you don't save. The average American saves less than 5% of their income. Financial experts recommend at least 15-20. The most successful investors I know started by saving 20-30 or more, especially early in their careers.
And then they invest those savings wisely. They put their money to work in assets that appreciate and generate additional income. They understand that working for money has limits. There are only so many hours in a day, but money working for you has no such limits. Money can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. This isn't just for the wealthy or privileged. I've seen people start with almost nothing and build considerable wealth by following this formula consistently over time. But average people don't follow this formula. They earn and spend, or they earn, spend, and borrow, which is even worse. They stay on the treadmill of financial mediocrity, running faster and faster but never getting ahead. Financial freedom isn't about having enough money to do nothing. It's about having enough money to do anything. It's about choice. It's about options. It's about opportunity. Average people sacrifice that freedom for immediate gratification. Successful people delay gratification for eventual freedom. The seventh reason average people stay average is they don't understand the power of association. Simply put, you become like the people you spend the most time with. Your income, your attitudes, your habits, your possibilities, all are influenced by the people closest to you. This isn't just folk wisdom. Studies consistently show that everything from your health habits to your income level is affected by your social circle. Average people associate with whoever happens to be around. They let proximity and convenience determine their relationships rather than intentionally seeking out connections that elevate them. Successful people are far more selective. They understand that relationships either lift you up or bring you down. There's no neutral. Every person you spend significant time with is influencing your thinking, your standards, and your expectations of what's possible. I often ask people to look at their 5 closest friends and calculate the average income, the average health, the average level of happiness. Chances are you're very close to that average. If you want to raise your standards in any area, one of the fastest ways is to associate with people who already maintain those higher standards. This doesn't mean abandoning old friends, but it does mean being intentional about expanding your circle to include people who challenge you, inspire you, and demonstrate what's possible. I remember when I first started seeking out successful mentors. Being around people who were achieving at high levels changed my perspective entirely. Goals that had seemed impossible suddenly felt attainable because I was watching real people achieve them. Their expectations became my expectations. Their standards became my standards. Average people often resist this idea. They say it's disloyal or lead us to choose your associations strategically. But is it disloyal to yourself and your potential to limit your growth by limiting your associations? Every major faith tradition and philosophy throughout history has emphasized the importance of wise association. Walk with the wise and become wise, says one ancient proverb. This isn't new information. We've always known that our associations shape us. Average people ignore this truth. Successful people leverage it. The 8th reason average people stay average is they don't set clear, compelling goals. They have wishes and dreams, but not concrete targets with deadlines and action plans. Goals convert the invisible to the visible. They transform vague desires into specific destinations. Without goals, you're like a ship without a destination, movement without progress. Average people avoid goal setting for various reasons. Some fear failure. If you don't set a target, you can't miss. Others fear commitment. Setting clear goals requires making choices and eliminating options. Still others simply don't know how to set effective goals. Successful people make goal setting a regular practice. They have short-term goals, medium-term goals, and long-term goals. They have goals for every important area of life. Career, finances, health, relationships, personal growth, but they don't just set goals. They write them down. They review them regularly. They create action plans. They track their progress. They adjust as needed. Goal setting for them isn't a one-time event, but an ongoing practice. I found that what you set your goals on is what you move toward. The mind is like a guided missile. It needs a target to aim for. Without that target, it simply maintains its current trajectory. This is why average people often find themselves in the same place year after year. Without clear goals pulling them forward, inertia keeps them where they are. The familiar becomes a prison rather than a launching pad. When I ask average performers about their goals, I often get vague responses. I want to be happy. I want to make more money. I want a better job. These aren't goals. They're wishes. Goals are specific. Goals have deadlines. Goals include measurable outcomes. Successful people set goals that stretch them without breaking them. Goals that require growth but remain within the realm of possibility. Goals that excite them and scare them a little at the same time. And they set these goals based on their own desires and values, not on what others expect. Average people often pursue goals they think they should want rather than what truly matters to them. This leads to achievement without fulfillment, another kind of average life. The 9th reason average people stay average is they lack the discipline of daily habits. They can't consistently do what needs to be done regardless of mood or circumstance. Success isn't about making the right choice once. It's about making the right choices consistently, day after day, even when you don't feel like it. This requires discipline, the ability to subordinate immediate desires to long-term value. Average people let their feelings dictate their actions. If they feel motivated, they take action. If they don't, they don't. This makes their performance inconsistent and their results unpredictable. Successful people take action whether they feel like it or not. They understand that motivation is fickle, but discipline is reliable. They build systems and routines that ensure the important things get done regardless of how they feel on any given day. This discipline shows up in their morning routines, their work habits, their exercise regimens, their reading practices, their saving and investing patterns. They don't rely on willpower alone. They create environments and schedules that make the right choices easier and the wrong choices harder. I often say discipline weighs ounces while regret weighs tons. The small disciplines you practice today prevent the massive regrets you'd otherwise face tomorrow. Average people avoid discipline because it's uncomfortable in the moment. They choose what feels good now over what leads to good later. They hit the snooze button instead of getting up early to exercise. They check social media. Instead of working on their side business, they buy the thing they want now instead of investing for what they want most. Successful people make the opposite choice. They understand that temporary discomfort leads to lasting satisfaction, while temporary comfort often leads to lasting regret. The 10th reason average people stay average is they focus on consumption rather than creation. They spend their lives taking in rather than putting out. We live in a consumer culture that trains us to consume products, entertainment, information, experiences. There's nothing inherently wrong with consumption, but when consumption becomes your primary mode of operating, average is the inevitable result. Truly successful people balance consumption with creation. They don't just read books, they write them. They don't just listen to podcasts, they start them. They don't just use products, they develop them. They don't just work at companies, they build them. Creation requires more effort than consumption. It's riskier. It exposes you to criticism. It demands original thought. It pushes you to develop new skills. All of these factors drive growth in ways that pure consumption never can. Average people spend most of their lives consuming what others create. Successful people certainly consume. They read voraciously, listen attentively, and learn constantly, but they use that input to fuel their own creation. This connects to a larger principle: value. Average people focus on taking value. Successful people focus on giving value. The marketplace rewards value creation. The more value you create for others, the more value returns to you. This is true whether you're an employee, an entrepreneur, an artist, or a professional. Your income is a direct reflection of the value you create and the number of people you create it for. Average people ask, what can I get? Successful people ask, what can I give? Average people focus on what they're entitled to receive. Successful people focus on what they're responsible to provide. This shift from consumption to creation, from taking to giving, transforms how you approach everything. Work becomes an opportunity to create value rather than just earn a paycheck. Relationships become opportunities to add value rather than just get needs met. Learning becomes a means to create more value rather than just acquire information. When you focus on creating value, on contributing more than you consume, you naturally rise above average. The market doesn't reward average, it rewards exceptional. And exceptional comes from giving, creating, and contributing in ways that stand out. So what does all this mean for you? How do you break free from average? It starts with a decision, a clear, definite decision that average is no longer acceptable, that you were made for more, that you're capable of more, that you deserve more, not because you're entitled to it, but because you're willing to earn it. This decision isn't made once. It's made daily, sometimes hourly. It's made every time you choose growth over comfort, responsibility over blame, focus over distraction, learning over entertainment, saving over spending, creating over consuming? And here's what I know. The decision to leave average behind is available to anyone willing to make it. It doesn't require special talents, ideal circumstances, or perfect timing. It requires courage. It requires commitment. It requires consistency. The path beyond average isn't mysterious. It's well marked by those who've traveled it before. But it isn't crowded. Few choose to walk it because few are willing to pay the price of admission. Temporary discomfort for lasting fulfillment. But those who do make that choice, those who decide that average isn't enough, that they want an extraordinary life on their own terms, discover something remarkable. The very qualities they develop on the journey become their greatest rewards. Discipline, focus, responsibility, wisdom, contribution. So here we are at the crossroads, the place where you decide what happens next in your story. You've heard the truth about average. You know the reasons people stay stuck. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? I found that information without action creates frustration, not transformation. It's not enough to know better. You must do better. And doing better starts with a fundamental choice, a choice that only you can make. Will you continue to accept what's always been acceptable to you? Or will you raise your standards and demand more from yourself than anyone else ever has? Most won't make that choice. They'll nod their heads, feel temporary inspiration, then return to their comfortable routines. And there's nothing wrong with that choice if you're truly content with average results. But if you want more, if you feel that pull toward your potential, then average can never satisfy you. Remember what we discussed? Average isn't about ability. It's about standards. It's not what you can do. It's what you choose to do. Every day, your choices are shaping your destiny. Every day, you're voting for the person you'll become. Choose comfort too often, and you vote for average. Choose blaming others too often, and you vote for average. Choose entertainment over education too often, and you vote for average. Choose spending over investing too often, and you vote for average. But choose growth over comfort, responsibility over blame, learning over amusement, investing over spending, and you're voting for extraordinary. You're declaring that average isn't your destiny. You're committing to the path less traveled. This path isn't easy. If it were, everyone would take it. There will be resistance. There will be setbacks. There will be those who don't understand your new choices, your new standards, your new direction. But with each step, you'll grow stronger. With each challenge, you'll develop greater capacity. With each small win, you'll build momentum toward the life you truly want, not the life you've settled for. Start small. Don't try to change everything at once. Pick one area where you've been average and commit to excellence. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's your finances. Maybe it's your relationships or your career or your personal growth. Whatever you choose, bring your full focus and commitment, create a clear goal, develop daily disciplines, seek out mentors and models, guard your time and your mind, focus on creating value, take full responsibility. Do this consistently and something magical happens. Your success in one area spills over into others. The confidence you gain, the skills you develop, the momentum you build, these transfer across your life, lifting everything higher. Remember, average isn't your natural state. It's just what happens when you don't make conscious choices. Excellence isn't your natural state either. It's what happens when you do make conscious choices, day after day, decision after decision. The distance between average and exceptional isn't as far as you might think. Often, it's just a few key decisions made consistently over time. The same minutes that the average person wastes, the successful person invests. The same dollars that the average person spends, the successful person saves and grows. The same challenges that stop the average person inspire the successful person to find a way. Your life can change the moment you decide it must change. Not that it should change or that you hope it changes, but that it must change. When you reach that point of must, when average becomes unacceptable and your potential becomes non-negotiable, you've taken the first and most crucial step. The rest is simply showing up, day after day, making choices that align with your highest aspirations rather than your momentary desires. That's the path beyond average. That's the journey to extraordinary. The choice is yours. What will you decide?